Hmm, interesting. Change some settings to make my camera more grainy, I guess. Interesting. All right. So, I don't exactly know what I'm going to talk about tonight. I don't know if I am going to talk about anything tonight, but it's been, I think, about a week. I said I was going to take a couple of days off, and I took a week off. And I've been thinking about that quite a bit. Mostly, I've been thinking about how um, I don't know what this button on my keyboard does. That's interesting. Thinking about how habit works for me. I was doing this regularly because it was a habit, and that's both good and bad. I had a habit of doing it, and therefore I did it regularly. I had a habit of doing it, and therefore I did it without knowing why I was doing it. I broke the habit of doing it, which meant I stopped doing it, which is good if I was trying to, not do this without purpose. But it's not great if I was actually trying to continue doing it because you break the habit, you stop doing it. I guess that's neither here nor there. Habit is just the way that you function when you're on autopilot. Habit is accepting that your brain is not guiding your actions. Habit is using the fact that you have an autopilot system that takes care of things for you to your advantage. So you build good habits and you do the things that you intend to do without thinking about it. This works really well when you're trying to eat well, trying to learn and grow, trying to exercise things that you feel are virtuous in and of themselves. It helps when you're trying to do some sort of a long-term task that takes a lot of small efforts over time, bodybuilding or weight loss or just reading books or writing, learning new skills. There are a lot of things that you can put on autopilot. Unfortunately, thinking and adapting and ideating and creative disruption kind of things are not really habitable, are not really so routine. If you would like to, that's worth dissecting, I guess, a little bit. You can form habits that take you to places that are outside your comfort zone. You can form a habit of questioning. You can form a habit of risk-taking. You can form a habit of starting things that you don't know whether or not you have the ability to finish, and then doing your best to finish them. You can take a habit. You can make a habit out of expanding your thing. The types of things that you're comfortable with. You can make a habit out of taking risky choices. And that's all good. I very much like that. I think that I am that person, usually. And being that person, being the type of person who's willing to take social risks, willing to take risks on new skills or new opportunities, being a person who's made a habit out of, and I can't say whether or not I really believe that this is good, but pursuing legitimacy, somebody who's made a habit out of pursuing legitimacy. I will always look for opportunities to add certifications to my name. Like if you're going to spend time on something, you should get that time back somehow, right? You should receive some sort of objective valuation for the time that you've invested. And that is easy for simple things. If you want a degree, if you want a certificate, if you want to demonstrate that you've pass a class, if you want, you know, if you want to pursue some athletic um, opportunity, and with the intent of getting an award or something for it, getting a medal, yeah, you can do that. But the more abstract things get, the less likely you are to have some material outcome. And I've spent a lot of time recently in the abstract. And by in the abstract, I mean talking about specifically not abstract things. Specifically, what is life like for humans on planet Earth? Is it good? Is it bad? Are there things that we should be concerned about? Are there challenges that we have to face? What should we be concerned with? What is our objective? More and more, there are some big challenging things that are very much not abstract, but they're so large that they're sometimes hard to see. And those things you don't get a participation trophy for. In fact, the majority of the time, it seems, you don't get anything for the time that you spend thinking about those problems. One example might be climate change. It appears that we are headed toward a world that is going to be experientially different from the one that we know. This will be ruinous to many ecosystems. I think humans will be affected, but we will not be the most affected out of all creatures, out of all denizens of the planet. There are some entire ecosystems that will probably fundamentally end as a result of the level of climate change that's likely to occur. I have not read long into any of the outcomes, the material outcomes of what climate change might look like, and therefore my estimates on how human life will be effective are probably pretty conservative compared to the reality. My understanding is that we're going to see some changes in weather. We're going to see some changes in temperature. We're going to see climate regions around the world shifting. This will be problematic for a lot of the flora and fauna, the natural environment in those territories. If they fundamentally change climate, then those species will not be compatible with their home territory. They'll have to move, or they'll die, or they'll adapt, which could mean a significant amount of life on Earth could die. That could be the outcome. And if that's the case, then this is a very fragile system, and we don't know what the effects of that could be. If the effects of climate change are that 20 or 30% of life on Earth has disappeared because their home climates, their natural climates where they thrive, are no longer available or compatible with their existence, then that could fundamentally change the composition of the planet, including the materials, nutrients, and oxygen and water that we need to survive. I don't know. But I have always thought about it very conservatively, that we will lose some coastline. There will be many populous cities that will evaporate, and we will lose those local ecosystems. We will lose those indigenous life forms, and we will, if we want to survive, have to relocate to other areas, and the value of all of those civilizations will be utterly lost overnight. Um, so that is my conservative perspective on it. And I try not to be too alarmist because I don't really study it. Um, to say, this is a cascading effect that will continue until all of life perishes. I don't know that. I only know that there will be some definite, observable early term change, and beyond that, I don't know. So my hope is that what climate change means is everywhere on Earth moves hotter by 5 degrees. Um, our coastal communities evaporate and disintegrate. Our many different types of flora and fauna local to those areas, as well as on the borders of existing climate regions, will disappear, and the ecosystems will remain relatively intact on a global scale. But I mean, there's no reason to presume that. And again, I should look at these things, I suppose. Why would it stop? Why would there be some intermediate release in there? If one thing goes, then everything else goes one at a time until there's nothing left of the system. Could be ruinous for humanity. I mean, that's what people say about it, that it will be ruinous for humanity. So I am sure that that's true. So that's a concern. That's such a big concern that I acknowledge, and many folks don't acknowledge. And even in acknowledging it, I'm telling you, I don't think about it enough. I don't know about it enough. I definitely don't have solutions or opinions, but I know it's there. War, devastation through human violence is out there in the wild. It's been occurring globally for decades. At our hand, we continue to involve ourselves, I guess is the most lighthearted way to put it, in affairs internationally, and to the ruin of those peoples and nations, cultures, and we've built a reputation for it. And there are others who we compete with in this space who have, probably similar reputations, I suppose. But I really do think that we're the king in that area of involving ourselves where we don't belong, to our disgrace and to the ruin of others. And we do it to ourselves. We've been doing it to ourselves. This year started with the possibility of a new bloody era for American life, and I don't think we've escaped that specter. In fact, just this weekend, there was a trial on Donald Trump's guilt in the January 6th attack on the Capitol, and he was acquitted specifically, as in terms of his impeachment by the Senate. And I've only seen small clips of it because I don't have the energy. I don't have the emotional energy right now to go back there. But we've gone back because of the outcome. The outcome was he was acquitted. And that means we're going back. So it doesn't matter whether we have the emotional energy. We had a brief reprieve from having to think about it because, well, don't worry. We're closing that chapter and we're moving on And we've now recognized it for what it is, but we haven't recognized it for what it is. We haven't condemned it for what it is. It continues. This is an ongoing story. Continues because the Republican representatives believe that Donald Trump's ghost still looms large in their party and in their constituency. And if they believe it does, then it does, because they've enabled that. They have acknowledged that there is a force in the room that they believe is greater than themselves, and in doing so, they've made it greater than themselves, if it wasn't already. It would have been, I think, a simple statement to say, we're done with this now. That would have legitimized the Republican Party to a degree, and stabilized it moving forward, and separated whatever Donald Trump was and is doing, made it its own thing. They were so worried that they were going to lose such a core component of their constituency that they were willing to throw away what they were previously in order to pursue it. That's an interesting thought. Republicans recognize that what Donald Trump represents is a large part of their identity as a political organization. And yet they still champion that organization. That's unusual. I would think that if you saw, gee whiz, the majority of this party seems to be in line with the thinking of Donald Trump, the rhetoric of Donald Trump, the politics and the violence and the perspectives of Donald Trump, that you would then say, this is not what I meant to be a part of. I meant to be a part of something that represents these values. And you would break away not because you felt that you had power in the party, but because you felt like the party was not what you thought it was. And in doing this, in acknowledging Trump as the heart of the Republican Party, the Republican senators have said, we understand that this is who you are. We still want you, regardless. And therefore, they're saying it's who they are, or who they're willing to be. It's who they're willing to be. They do not renounce the party of Trump. They do not renounce the rhetoric of Trump. They do not feel conflicted that their party is now this. They're still that party. So it leads you to ask, is this who they've believed themselves to be all along? Is it copacetic with what they stood for all along? Or do they not believe in anything? Because either this is okay, because it's similar enough to what they already believed, or it's okay because they actually didn't believe in anything. It's one of those two. It might be a good segue to talk about, is politics in America today a place that affords people to believe in things? Can you be a public representative and believe in things? Or is this all just a means of taking the paper from one end of the table and putting it on the other? Are the folks who we have in public office just there to administer processes? Therefore, this is not where we see our ideology, our beliefs, our values in our society. It's just where we see people maintaining the policies and the processes of the state. There was a video that I really, really, really enjoyed from Jack. Thank you, Jack. Sent me some things this past week. One of them was called Hypernormalization by Adam Curtis, A Different Experience of Reality. The other was called The Power of Nightmares, which I guess was a BBC series. I watched part 1, Baby It's Cold Outside. But this hypernormalization, this video, no, you can't see it. All right, Hypernormalization by Adam Curtis. I think, I don't know, it was like 2 hours and 45 minutes long. And that was the longer of the 2 videos. I usually try to watch these things on 2 times speed, but that one was so dense that I had to slow down a little bit. So I spent, a good chunk of time on these. Argued that really politicians have become managers of public life. And they cited an event in New York City where the politicians, where the government of the city put forth bonds for banks to bid on and purchase, so that the city could expand its debt and continue providing public services and going into debt by doing so. And the banks didn't show up to buy the bonds several times throughout the course of the day, and then eventually they realized, oh shoot, the banks aren't just willing to continue to eat this cost. We have to work with them. We have to play ball with them as businesses. And what does that mean? It meant for New York City that they had to try to get themselves out of debt. They had to cut a great many things they were spending money on, public services and teachers and things. So from that moment on, there's been a transition to government being treated like a business because it's being run by a business. Because at the end of the day, you have to spend money, and the stewards of the money are those who understand how to make money. So ultimately, if everything runs by money, and there are some folks who have money who deem profit and profitability important, and look at things like risk and cost over time, then they're going to bring that into their relationships with public entities. And they're going to say, I understand that this is your ideology, sir, but I cannot make this investment based on the risk profile. This is not a negotiable position. I'm not coming to the table with an ideology. I'm telling you that I'm unable to make this purchase or make this investment or approve this spending because it is not profitable. And if one of the participants runs on pure logic and the other of the participants runs on ideology, then at the end of the day, one of them is flexible and the other is not. That was part of the argument in that very long video. It was really, really good. I really recommend that one. It captured so many things that are happening politically, militarily, nationally, internationally, globally, culturally, technologically, all at the same time. Really good hodgepodge of, remember, all these things are simultaneously happening. And I think if anything stuck with me throughout the course of this week, it was that these things are happening all at the same time. I spent some time early this morning watching the video for the new Elder Scrolls Online expansions that are coming out because I'm a fan of Elder Scrolls Online. My background on my desktop still has Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind, and the one this time is not Blackwood, the region between Argonia, Cyrodiil, and elsewhere, down in the corner where Leowen was in the original, Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. This is a thriving online community. And hypernormalization makes mention several times of thriving online communities over the past couple of decades and how we retreat into these worlds. And it's not just an individual phenomenon. It's not what probably my dad would describe as being some moral failing or failure of character to retreat from the real world into a game. No, the real world is going in there. By real world, I mean the way that people interact with one another is now in the machine, in the internet, in cyberspace. So that's where the communities are, and that's where the town squares are, and that's where collaboration can happen, that's where exchange can happen. But they all exist in very specific pipelines. They're purpose-built domains of socialization and communication. And they exist within a framework of products. So I've had wonderful social experiences through Elder Scrolls Online for now a decade. But those social experiences do not then translate to something. I can't call those folks and ask them if they can help me build a gazebo. I can't ask them, to watch my kids. I can't ask them for a recommendation. We can't band together and help the old guy down the street or check in on him and see if he's doing okay. Bring him food. Like these are not my tribe. These are not my, what's another word for it? These are not my, shoot, I can't remember there's like a German word for the 150 people that you know, and then, once you've exceeded that, the people that you know in a different way. It's impersonal. You can't have a personal connected relationship with the human brain built the way it is with more than 150 people. Beyond that, it's a different type of relationship. But they're not my crew, right? They're not my community. They are a community. I belong to several communities that are purpose-built. I have maybe a community of friends who I talk about Bernie Sanders with. I have a community of people that I talk about Disco Elysium with. I have a community of people that I talk about Noam Chomsky with. I have a community of people I talk about Jesus Christ with. I have a community of people I talk about Solid Snake and Big Boss with. I have a community of people I talk about Vivek and Niravar and Dagoth with. I have a community of people that I talk about technologies with. I have a group of people I talk about politics with. They're not really the same communities. There's some lamppost that we all fly toward, and we interact with that lamppost, and that's the purpose of that community. And all it really does is highlight that subject. It doesn't highlight the people who participate in that subject are they don't exist. It's just all content about that subject. So when it comes time to talk about some other thing with these people, you talk about that other thing with other people, right? As opposed to if, in a more traditional sense, you have neighbors, and you talk to your neighbors about the big game, and you talk to your neighbors about the weather, and you talk to your neighbors about church, and you talk to your neighbors about politics, and you talk to the neighbors about business, you talk to the neighbors about finances, and you talk to the neighbor about kids and school and public transportation and war, and like you talk to those same people about everything, and you get to know those people, not so much the subjects that you're talking about, but you're getting to know a person, which I think happens now and then, and it feels so weird. It feels so weird when you put something out there, somebody responds to it in a way that's not sensational or specific to that thing. It's like somebody will say, look, I don't care too much about this, or I don't see what you're saying here, or I don't agree with that, but it's good to talk to you, or hoping you get your head on straight, or something. It's like, look, if you don't want to engage with this content, don't engage with this content, because it's about the content. It's not about you and me. But some people, it is about you and them. It is about the relationship, and that's good. That's good because it means that there's somebody there that you can talk to. But those are the exception now. Elder Scrolls Online is a great place to have a social experience. But as soon as it starts crossing outside of the subject matter, that social experience is like, this isn't why I'm here. I have so many minutes a day that I can devote to this, and this is what I expect to see and experience during those minutes. It has to do with the content that I'm enjoying. It has to do with the content that I'm experiencing. It doesn't so much have to do with the fact that you can't make rent in the Philippines or wherever you are. Like, or you're on medical leave, and it's hard to take care of your kids while you're on medical leave from your job because you were injured and your spouse can't work and you have kids to take care of. Like, if that happened in an environment where you were experiencing each other as human beings, that would supersede any other thing that you could possibly be talking about. But I've had that sort of interaction in Elder Scrolls Online. Somebody said those kinds of things. And my instinct at the time was, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I hope somebody does something about this. I have no idea why I'm thinking about this in my 30 minutes a day that I can come play a game. It was like, I don't remember if it was a actual like contact, or if it was a guild, or if it was just chatter between folks who were present at the time. But I remember that interaction, and it's a non sequitur. It doesn't follow. So I wanted to think, man, what if there was a way to leverage this inside world? No, because you leverage relationships. The GameStop thing, the GameStop stock thing that happened, I don't know, weeks ago, a month ago. That was a subject. It was subject matter that a great many people sought to interact with. It had nothing to do with the people interacting with each other. It was, here's something that we can put out here that great many people can interact toward. And I was very excited that might represent something, an idea at the helm, and a great many people following that idea as a banner. It seems promising. But those people, and you have to acknowledge this with any online community, don't have any connection to one another, don't have any relationship to one another. It's not about the relationship that they have to one another, it's the relationship that they have to that idea. And that is the nature of these online communities. And so you have people who identify in different ways simultaneously, and those communities that they identify with are different people, are filled with different people. So there's no one neighborhood that you live in. There's several neighborhoods that you live in, and you experience them all to some degree less than you would your 150 close people that would be in your neighborhood before. It must have been a very different life to be surrounded by the same people all the time, and those people disagree with you about things. They hold different beliefs. They have different perspectives, and you're not going to change them, and you're never going to agree with them, but they are your people. They're your people. Now, my people are the people who see things the same way I do. My people are the people who are Elder Scrolls fans. My people are the people who are Metal Gear fans. My people are the people who like Bernie Sanders, like Hideo Kojima. My people believe that Jesus Christ was more of a socialist figure than he was whatever the Republicans have made him out to be. Like I have a people. No, I have multiple peoples that I am a part of, that I consider myself conversant with. I would never have a neighbor that liked all the things that I liked and was in all the technologies I was into and had the same skills I had, and had the same politics I did, and the same religion I did, and the same uh, favorite, landmark media entries over the past decades. Watched the same YouTube channels. Was a father of young kids. All the other things that I am. And yet, those are the communities that I am a part of now. They're all different people, but they're all like me. It feels very unusual when someone steps over the fence, and says, "Hey, so you and I are tied to each other in some social means, not related to things we feel or believe or associate ourselves with, but just by nature of you and me know each other. We have a relationship, and I see you expressing a thing, I'll express a different thing, and that's okay, and we'll move on." I always feel like those people are precious, and I sometimes bend over backwards to try to keep those relationships alive, because there's just something so unique about it. It's nice when somebody comes into my personal space and tells me that they disagree with me and that they'll be back. you know, um, there's maturity there. It's unusual, and I value that, and I want them to know I value it, and I want to give them something back in return for their time and attention. But anyway, it's the exception. It's not the norm. So these online spaces are not really spaces where community in a formal sense, in a traditional sense, can take root. They're aligned to concepts. And by and large, those concepts are consumable concepts. They have some relationship to your pocketbook. Elder Scrolls Online has a relationship to my pocketbook. It's a product to consume. Metal Gear is a product to consume. I mean, it's not quite like interacting with brands, like having a Twitter war with Wendy's or something, but interacting with people under the banner of a brand, under the banner of a product or a shared interest in a consumer sense, does really limit the scope of your conversation. Maybe not terminally. I mean, you can probably have a guild in Elder Scrolls Online that turns into a political discussion that turns into some outside of Elder Scrolls Online political organization that results in some sort of community action. That's great. It's unlikely, because all of the systems that exist in that world where you're spending your time are built to keep you focused on that world, because that system was put together so that you would spend money on it. You like, all right, so then this is where we transition to, why does that space exist? And why have they gone to such great lengths to allow you to spend your time in this way? Well, because they have something called user experience designers, because they care about something called user experience. It's because they're listening to what you want. They're listening to how you want to spend your time. They want you to spend your time on their product. Because when you're in that environment, you're going to be thinking about ways that you can purchase the product. Well, I think I woke Lainey up. Or Lainey woke herself up. Let me make a note. She's rustly. Maybe not. I don't want to have to stop the video and run up. She stopped rustling. Okay. such as being a father. So I really have a hard time with one of the most wonderful things about this venue for me is that it allows me to take this circuitous route around where I like over and over and over again until I get to where I think a thought is. I probably have not. I was just now getting around to the user experience design thing, which is really one of the main reasons I wanted to do this tonight, is because I want to talk about user experience. But I've spent 40 minutes going in circles talking about other stuff that I've been up to, that I'm thinking about, that have led to this, because I knew that if I just uncorked it, I'd eventually get down to a thought that I wanted to have. I love being able to do this because I don't get to do that normally, because that was a near miss of, you know, maybe I have to go do some dad stuff, but usually it's pretty dad stuff. Like, it's time, more now. The exception is when I'm at work, and when I'm at work, it's different people who are clamoring for my attention. So my brain, unfortunately, is one of those things that you have to like prime, and then it just sort of like everything, because everything's tied to everything else. So if you pull hard enough, then you'll see my whole brain fall out. But if you get me started, ask me, you know, how did you sleep? And I'll tell you about the dreams that I had, and then I'll tell you about what I think those mean, and I'll tell you about what my anxieties are, because this is what I've been reading, this is what I think, and this is what I think we can do about it, and this is why I'm concerned. And, you know, 30 seconds into realizing that you've turned the faucet on, you're going to try to find a way to turn it back off again, because so I rarely get to do this, which is why this is such a very valuable time for me. It's because I can actually get down to the core of that that thought that's wedged somewhere in my brain that would take a plunger and an hour to get out. All right, so let's get back to plunging. User experience design. User experience design, I love. I'm so incredibly happy that this is a career track. I'm so, when I first heard those words, when I first found out that was a thing, oh my gosh, I was so relieved. I can't even tell you. And I'm so happy that I get to be in a field where people do this sort of thing. I got into technology because I wanted to develop, well, I was doing some real stupid stuff when I graduated my bachelor's degree because it was the recession. I was a telemarketer, made 200 to 250 calls a day for a small electronic medical records company in Florida, and making barely more than minimum wage. I think minimum wage was like $7.25. I was making $12.50. Full time, doing a whole bunch of other things in addition to my telemarketing. I made some brochures for them. I helped redesign their webpage. I wrote some fax campaigns. I helped with their social media, helped with their commercials. I started one of their commercials. I came back and got a degree. I realized that my career would be stunted permanently if I stayed in the workplace, if I stayed in my career using my first job as a benchmark, because that benchmark was set the worst possible time, in the midst of the financial crisis. And I graduated in the spring of 2009, and it was just, there was nothing. So I went back to school. I got a degree in computer graphics technology, thinking I already did computer graphics. This is literally what I'm doing. I'm just going back to get it on paper, so I don't have to tell people that I learned what I'm doing by making memes on the internet. I can legitimately say that I know what I'm talking about because I have a degree in it, and the pressure was off. So I just took a bunch of fun video game stuff, and then while I was doing that, they said, Kojima Productions is coming to America, to Los Angeles. And I was like, oh, this is it. You know, like, here I am dicking around taking video game classes, and Big Boss wants you. That was the flyer. So then I'm like, okay, there's a whole bunch of things I need to learn here. I'm already going to school for computer graphics, so I need to learn modeling. I need to learn texturing, UV mapping, animation, you know, painting weights and building rigs. And I need to learn scripting, and I need to learn working in a game engine. I need to learn programming. I need to be able to design systems and just everything, everything. I quit my job in housing that was paying for my way in college and took a job at the lab that allowed me to learn Unity. I learned Unity outside of class because they weren't teaching it in class. I learned it on YouTube in a week and then got a job at their Center for Innovation through Visualization and Simulation based on a resume that I submitted, part of which was a coding test that I learned on YouTube in a week for Unity. And then I was doing Unity projects while I was there because I was teaching myself through YouTube. And then they asked me to help teach a class in Unity because they had no classes in Unity. So I guess I brought Unity from YouTube to Purdue. And I gained these technology skills and then greatly expanded them once I landed my first full-time job out of college. And now I'm looking at a whole bunch of technical stuff. And somewhere along the line in there, user experience design became an incredibly important component of all of this. I didn't know this at first. I don't even know if those were words that people were using together when I decided that I was going to go back and get my computer graphics technology degree. But user experience design, design thinking, and all that stuff, like, I think it's, so back to what I was trying to say is, I think that this is a promising development. Designing value propositions that are targeted toward your user base or potential user base or multiple demographics within your user base. Looking for ways to efficiently use the resources that you have to provide value to people in new ways, or to change the value that you're providing to people in positive ways. This is really good because it's forcing somebody in a role, in an official role, to go out and search for what people want and represent that. So you are acting as a representative. It's a very unusual, it's not the same kind of representative that you would have in, you know, somebody that you elected to public office. But I think it's a more genuine representation, because this person is continually seeking your input, continually seeking how to represent you better, understand you better, provide value to you. And that's why these communities like Elder Scrolls Online are so welcoming, because they provide people with what they want. And and then once they've provided it to people, they go ask people, is this what you want? How can we do better? What do you want? What else do you want? What else can we do for you? You want a pet? Okay. You want a companion? Okay. You want a house? Okay. You want to be able to play for free? Okay. User experience designers are a little slice of utopia in a dystopian system. So we're kind of, it's been established, I think, at this point, that the profit-seeking motive rules, and the most effective at pursuing a profit-seeking motive are the large, the corporate, the faceless, the ubiquitous, you know, the merged, the monopolistic entities that that rule the marketplace. And yet, while all of this consolidation is happening, this consolidation of power in the corporate sphere, consolidation of power into the money and those who have the most of it, we're opting to develop user experience design mentality, ideology of, we want to make our people happy with our services, and therefore we're going to go well out of our way to understand who they are and provide them value proposition. No, I don't think that this is going to work. I'd love to say that I think it's going to work. I'd love to say that this is the new democracy, right? But it's not, because there still is an end purpose. User experience design is the means, it's not the end. The end is extraction. The end is, let's give them anything that we need to get profit. Profit is the motive. At the end of the day, it has to be profitable. All these business models and value propositions are profit driven. And profit only really means that you are the most efficient at extracting value out of the system. There's nothing in there that says you have to put value back in, unless it aids you in getting the value out again. So if you're making a profit of 50 generic units, it's okay to spend 10 generic units to get that 50. Unless somebody else is getting 40 generic units by investing 5, then they have a more efficient system than you do, and your system, even though it's overall more profitable, will not compete over time. So you need to have the most efficient system in terms of generic units spent versus generic units earned. So the profit motive ensures that there is a limit on how much you can really bend this user experience thing to meet the needs of your user base. They have to be able to pay for it, and you have to be the most efficient in checking those boxes for them, so that they will give you their money the most often, or the most, or for the least. So if we were trying to solve problems like, how can we make sure everybody has food, or how can we make sure everybody has housing, or how can we make sure everybody has health care? The user experience approach to that might be valid in that it'll help you identify what the genuine pains are, and genuine opportunities are from the perspective of your users. But it is not going to be the most effective in terms of how do we maximize the value that's being put into the communities, because no, you will maximize the profits being extracted from the communities. That's really what these roles are meant to do. So a user experience designer is not there to make you a steak. They're there to season a burger, I guess. That's sort of a weak analogy. They're not there to make you a steak. They're there to season roadkill to your taste. At the end of the day, nobody's spending money on you. Nobody's taking you out to a Ruth's Chris. They're just trying to make the garbage palatable. Well, if through effort and creativity and genuine empathy, you can understand what somebody likes about steak, and you can make roadkill into that for them in all the ways that are meaningful to them. Have you fulfilled your obligation to humanity? It would be one thing to give someone a car, the ideal car, the car that they want. But it would be another thing, possibly a more efficient thing, possibly a more effective thing, to ask them why they want the car. And it turns out that they just want to look better. Maybe they can wear their car. Maybe what they want out of a car, you can give to them in clothes for 1/100th of the cost. Or maybe what they wanted out of a car, you can give to them out of public transportation, which you can, again, get for maybe 1/1000th of the cost. So maybe this is an opportunity to be more efficient in providing services and value to people. Maybe user experience design does have some answers for us. Maybe when somebody says they want housing, they want a nice house. What they really mean is they want security and privacy, and maybe culture, and they want access to social services. They want access to communities. They want access to natural resources. They want access to, or maybe they want pride. Maybe they want a sense of accomplishment. Maybe they want to not have to worry about their, they don't want to be insecure about their housing situation. And so if you look at these things, maybe you can find a more efficient, effective way to provide all of those basic needs for someone without them needing to purchase a single family home in a populous suburban area that would cost them in the higher end of what salaries are in that community. So maybe user experience design does have an answer, because it allows you to think more efficiently about what people really want compared to what they express that they want, what they think they want. Maybe people don't want a house and a car, but there are some things that boxes you can check for them with respect to their needs for houses and cars that you can get for them much more efficiently, that they would be content with, that would be fulfilling, and that would cost that would be a fraction of the cost for you and for them. If they're paying $1,500 a month for a house, but you can check all of those boxes for them in a way that only costs you $500 a month, then you can pass it on to them for $1,000 a month and make a significant amount of profit, and they would be better off too, because they're getting all the things that they wanted without having to make that major investment. I mean, I think we'll scoff at it at first, right? Because we'll see the material circumstances that we upheld deteriorating. We will see that not everybody has a white picket fence anymore. Not everybody has a single family home anymore. Not everybody has 2 cars anymore and a garage. But all the things that means to people will still be there, because the user experience designer has gone out of their way to make sure that the value in the experience is still there. And so anything that's being materially experienced by the user, by the consumer, by the customer, is still very much present, even though the external sources of that have changed. Maybe there is some hope there, but I still don't trust it. I really like being able to call myself a user experience designer. I think user experience is the only honest job left. This is what people want. This is what people need, and this is how I'm going to help fulfill that. I love it. I would rather be a user experience designer in the 21st century than a politician in the 21st century, because the user experience designer is really delivering something to people. I don't think the politician has a hope of being anything more than what the hypernormalization video called a manager of public life. I've talked in circles a lot. I don't know if I've talked about anything. It's been really fun having this conversation, this one-sided conversation, this monologue. I really feel good about the fact that I was able to finally say a lot of those things that have been stewing in my head. And normally I would come to a conversation or a journal entry like this to say, here's what I've figured out. And this isn't one of those things. I haven't figured anything out. I just have a bunch of thoughts. And I've covered many of them. I'm sure I've forgotten some of them. But I'm coming up on just about exactly 1 hour. I think that's a good stop point. I'm not going to feel pressured to do this again the following night, but I will be back again. We'll see when that is. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.